Following my video earlier on about Dartmoor National Park and wild camping, there is just a little bit more information that might just be worth, just discussing here, and you can leave a comment below. Dartmoor landowners to be paid by park to allow wild camping. Landowners reach a new agreement after a hedge fund manager won a court battle last week establishing that wild camping is not a right. And that is obviously presumably the gentleman there. A hedge fund manager who won a case over the right to camp on his Dartmoor estate will receive payment for allowing overnight stays after landowners reached a new agreement. Did he seriously take us, well, not us, but take Dartmoor to court to not allow camping, and then he's going to receive payment? But that certainly seems very, very strange. Alexander Darwall won his High Court battle last week in establishing that wild camping is not a right across Dartmoor, whereas Blankford Estate is located. But landowners on Thursday reached a new agreement with the national park to allow campers to stay for one night in designated areas. Sounds like you're going to be sort of, corralled into one area. We can have a look at the map later on. But for one night, without seeking permission. Visitors could previously stay 2 nights in the park without permission under an assumed right in a local bylaw that was unique in the country. So does this mean you can only camp for one night and then you have to go home? Or could you stay one night, move to a different location and camp again? That's not quite clear. I certainly won't be staying just for one night, that is for sure. I think quite often I stayed for 3. Anyway, moving on quickly. A High Court judge ruled last week that the bylaw did not confer a right to pitch tents or camp overnight after a case brought by Mr. Darwall and his wife Diana. The couple own the 4,000-acre Blandford estate, which includes Saddlemore, part of the commons where the Darwals graze livestock. Under the new arrangements, landowners will be paid for annual licensing, with the amounts yet to be determined. They will be able to change the terms, including where people will be able to camp when the licenses come up for annual review. So theoretically, you have 1 year, and then after a year, you could lose everything. John Howell, the chair of Dartmoor Commons Owners Association, said the amounts were likely to be nominal, potentially as low as £1. I suppose for legal reasons, they have to, I guess there's some reason why they have to pay something. Let's hope that it is literally just £1. The payments are expected to be made by the Parks Authority and taxpayer funded via the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. But the announcement was met with criticism from campaigners who had opposed the case brought by the Darwals amid concern it could lead to Dartmoor being closed off in the future. This is a ransom note from landowners who will be able to revoke permission to camp at any time, Guy Shrubsole, Right to Roam campaign said. It's not any time. It sounds like you would have a year, which is not any time, but yeah, that's close. James McCall, the head of policy, advocacy and campaigners at the Ramblers, said, whilst it's encouraging to see landowners and the National Park Authority working together to ensure much-loved tradition of wild camping on Dartmoor can continue, we are deeply concerned the long-held access rights has been reduced to permissive rights. This allows landowners the freedom to withdraw or attach conditions to this permission in the future, which is simply not good enough. Mr. Howard said the new arrangements would give landowners more control and flexibility over where campers can go, which he said would allow them to alleviate environmental damage. What environmental damage? This Mr. Howell, is he the chap who lives on the South Moor, and is he the one who has closed off Harford Gate car park? Because his excuse down there for closing that car park is environmental damage. There is no environmental damage down there, well, not that I can see, and I go there very, very regularly. Dr. Kevin Bishop, the Chief Executive of Dartmoor National Park Authority, said, "We have all worked quickly and collectively to ensure clarity is provided." So here, let's have a look at this camping map together, because there's a few interesting bits here that I think need highlighting. The High Court declared on 13th of January 2023 that the Dartmoor Commons Act 1985 does not confer on the public any right to pitch tents or otherwise make camp overnight on the Dartmoor Commons. We have reached an agreement with the Dartmoor Commons Owners Association to discuss how wild camping on some parts may continue. So on the face of it, you think that that's okay, but let's read on. Does this statement mean that Dartmoor National Park are not appealing to the High Court? No. The authority is considering the judgment and has sought external legal advice and will be considering this and whether we have solid grounds to seek permission to appeal. How would a permissive system work? The detail has yet to be developed, but in essence, landowners would enter into a legal agreement with us, which would grant permission to the authority to allow public to wild camp on specific land. For these areas, a member of the public wishing to wild camp would not have to seek the approval of the landowner, as it would already have been granted via the agreement. And as we've already read, this potentially would need renewing each year. What will this new permissive system cost? People wild camping will not be charged under this system. It is free at the point of delivery. The new agreements will involve a payment to landowners by the Dartmoor National Park, but this has yet to be discussed in detail, the amount. These costs have not been budgeted for by the authority. We will be writing to DEFRA to ask if they will provide funding to support this process. So do they need funding for the legal agreement, and or is the potential cost going to be so much more than £1, just as a token gesture, that they need extra money, to pay these landowners, which seems absolutely disgusting to me, that the landowners, should even need payment. How would I know where I can wild camp? And then this is obviously the map down here. So first of all, if we have a look at the North Moor, on the face of it, there's not too much that's changed here. East Mill Tor seems to not be included for some reason. Has that been included before? Blackator Copse, that's never been included anyway. That's a nature reserve, so you can't camp there anyway. This bit over here, I'm not quite sure about this bit. Has this been allowed before or not? A Hare Tor, White Hill, you've got Sharp Tor, Doe Tor. Obviously, these bits are okay, and Chat Tor, Doe Tor Brook, and these areas around here, they're all okay. But this whole area here is now not allowed to camp in. But I don't know. I don't know whether this is a new area that can't be wild camped on, or it's always been like that. I'm not sure of. This little bit over here, this I do believe has always been like this, that you've not been able to camp, legally, as it were, in the forest, and this area around here you've not been able to. And I think probably down by the roads you've not been able to. When we come down to the south moor, I'm not too sure about these little bits here, whether this is something that you could camp on before or not. So maybe place a comment below. The really interesting bit is this bit through here and this Plim steps and this valley through here. Now this, I think you could camp on before, and this River Plim area here, this area looks like it's now not allowed to camp on, and I think you were allowed to camp in this area here. I believe this area you could previously camp on, and I also believe, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me, but I do believe this might be National Trust land. So why is the National Trust not allowing camping in this whole area here? Like I said, I'm not exactly sure, but pretty sure. And then when we come down here, this is Harford, and there is a closed, locked, no longer usable car park here. So this P, if you need a P, and now no longer exists. The owner of this land here has closed this car park, and this car park has been closed now for at least 2 years, I believe, and you can no longer park there. And I'm guessing that that same person who owns the car park probably owns all of this, all of this land here, and this whole section of the South Moor is now closed, or isn't in this purple color to indicate that you can legally camp there. And the interesting thing is this over here, this is Stall Moor, this is Stall Down Barrow, and this is Stall Moor. Now, Stall Moor, as my understanding, and again, I may be wrong, but my understanding is that Stall Moor is owned by this chap who's caused all of this. So is he really now allowing camping and taking a fee? My understanding is that he owns Stall Moor, and Stall Moor is now included in the in this purple area that we can camp in. So is he now going to try and profit from campers for the Dartmoor National Park? It seems a bit weird. Is it just me, or does that look like a funny man running? You've got a head here with a nose and eyes. You've got one arm there, another arm here. You got like a thigh and a foot here, and then another thigh here, and then like a foot running there. It looks like that looks like a running man to me. On the face of it, I'm, at least happy that there is this agreement potentially. Also, I know some people are concerned that these landowners will renege on what they say. Personally, I don't think they will. I try to see the best in people where possible, and I would like to think that, once they've agreed to this, that they would just stick to that and that they wouldn't back out in a few years' time. But who knows? But there's clearly, Dartmoor covers this whole section here. And the pockets of legal camping are getting, smaller and, smaller and smaller. So I just wanted to add this map in just so you can see this as well. We'll just have a look and see what the Guardian says. I do apologize that we're talking about the Guardian, but we can't have it all. He did it because he wants to offer pheasant shoots, deer stalking, and holiday rentals on his land. I don't know how he's going to do deer stalking, and I don't know whether he's already doing pheasant shoots or not, and holiday rentals. I don't know what that, nowhere near wherever he's renting something. I can't really imagine the people renting anything are going to be walking out onto the moor and finding 20,000 tents parked out on the middle of the moor. But anyway, the park has come to an agreement with him Now the national park is understood to have come to an agreement with him and other landowners who will be paid to offer part of their estates for wild camping. There is to be a map, which we've looked at. So how is it ever possible? I don't I don't understand the logic between him going through all of this. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want any bad karma, but I simply don't understand the logic of him doing this and then being paid for wild camping. According to this new agreement, there will be a transfer of money between the authority and the landowners. It could be as little as £1. If it's only £1, I'm sure Dartmoor National Park can afford that, but it could be much more. We don't know. So if the national park needs help to pay, how much? Individual wild campers would not have to pay. You wouldn't have to take your credit card on a wild camping trip, but you would know from the map where you could camp. Campaigners have said this agreement is not good enough, as it means only a small portion of Dartmoor will be available for wild camping, when until recently they had access to the whole park. To be fair, it wasn't the whole park. There was a few bits that you couldn't camp on, but it's clearly less than it was. I think as an absolute last resort, if that's all we get, that's all we get, and if that's it, that's it. But clearly it's not perfect. We will not be appeased by the deal announced today, under which any landowner may withdraw permission for wild camping at will. I think it has to be after a year, and I would like to think that they wouldn't do that once they've agreed. I would hope that they would honor that for in perpetuity, but who knows? It is still unclear whether the national park still intends to appeal against the court ruling, but it has only 2 weeks to submit an intention to do so. I love this bit. A representative of Darwall declined to comment, but confirmed some of his land had been entered into the wild camping scheme. Fuck's sake. How can you decline to comment, but then confirm that some of it had been entered into the wild camping scheme? Just apps. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to say anything. They can have the bad karma, not me for this, but it just seems absolutely mind-bogglingly ridiculous. Anyway, I just wanted to bring you this update from the maps and a couple of, let's say, completely different newspapers. I'll see you in the next video. So whilst this is clearly some, good news of some description, clearly it's far from perfect.